Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everyone, my name is Ryan Morgan Christensen. Welcome to Bayat al-Ghadir. Today will be the third installment of our series regarding the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. For those who don't know me, my name is Ryan, as I said, Ryan Morgan Christensen. I've featured on a few videos on this channel in the past. If you haven't watched any of our videos before, suggest you check them out. Likewise, any of the previous videos of this series specifically. Furthermore, if you've watched any videos online regarding our channel, there may have been a recent one which I didn't feature on, quite sadly. I mustn't be doing a good enough job.
You've not made it.
You've not made it in regards to my inshallah. And but in regards to that, I just want to quickly say that me and I'm sure the rest of the boys will agree, we don't condone any of the stuff that was recently said about us in this video, which I'm sure everyone knows watching this video knows what I'm talking about. And we, to call for violence on anyone is definitely not good. Peace be upon them. So I just really want to knock that out of the park straight away. I don't really want to give the video or the creators too much of our time or attention. And at the end of the day, Allahu Alam, He knows what's going on. He knows what's in our hearts, and likewise other people. So just to recap, in the first video of this series, we talked about what the definition of Sahabah is in regards to the companions of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how there was no clear definition, Sunni school of thought regarding this term. There seemingly was no consensus as to what a Sahaba actually was, or Sahabi actually was, and just due to that, you obviously can find that there will be an array of different opinions as to how these people should be spoken about or seen from the Sunni school. In the last video, we talked about Dala Sahaba, the concept of the justice of the companions, and how once again there was no clear definition as to what that actually means. The reason why we're doing all these definitions is, one, so people can realize that the term Sahaba itself doesn't actually come with any connotation. It doesn't necessarily mean that, someone, just because someone's a companion, that they're necessarily a friend of someone. And it just means that they accompanied them. So likewise, as we've seen in the Qur'an, we found that some prophets even had companions that were Kaffirs. Okay, so we need to our job is to break down stigmas, and so everyone can have a better understanding, and then thus approach things more objectively. And today we're going to be looking at the Sunni school of thought, and it's an array of scholars and an array of opinions regarding, the concept of disrespecting these individuals, either, respectively or as a whole. I've got with me today Sayyid Ali and Sayyid Rida. Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Alaikum
assalam. I think to start off with, we'll touch on when it comes to disrespecting these individuals, what has the Sunni school of thought and its scholars said about such a concept, and how it should be approached by the adherents of that school? Said with her.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right, guys, I'm just going to open up a document. Let me just screen share first. Okay. Now I was going to mention a couple of hadiths from the different opinions of Sunni scholars about disrespecting the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah, bro, coming through live and clear.
Anybody can see my screen, yeah? Just to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, from Abu Zurar al-Razi, if you see anyone, this is the first hadith I'm mentioning, Abu Zurar al-Razi, if you see anyone deriding a companion of Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, then let it be known, let it be known to you that he is a heretic or a zindiq. Source, Fath al-Mughith, volume 4, page 32. Okay, let's show the scans. That's the fun cover. فتح المغيث وشرح الفية الحديث. That's the hadith. The right الرجل. And next hadith. Now the second hadith I'm going to mention is from Imam Malik. From Ibn Kathir quotes Imam Malik saying, Imam Malik has deduced infidelity of Rawafid, takfir of Rawafid basically, that despise the companions from this ayah, as reported in one report from him. This Tafsir Ibn Kathir, volume 7, page 362. Here we go. Tafsir al-Qur'an al-Azim for Ibn Kathir. That's the hadith. And, okay. Here we have as well, Imam Malik stated that the Rawafid are disbelievers because they hate the companions. May Allah be pleased with all of them. Malik said the companions enrage them. And according to this ayah, he who is enraged by the companion is a disbeliever. Several scholars agreed with the Malik's opinion. May Allah be pleased with them. There are numerous hadith mentioning the virtues of the companion, prohibiting the criticism of their mistakes, It is sufficient that Allah the Exalted has praised them and declared that He is pleased with them. Allah the Exalted and the Most Honored said. Now this is in Tafsir Ibn Kathir. I'm just going to show you guys the reference. Here we go.
Brother Reza, can you just
Yes,
slightly zoom into your screen in the document?
Inshallah. Okay, 1 second.
Slightly larger.
Okay. Okay. Now here's see. لا يغضب بهم الكفار, and relying on this ayah, Imam Malik stated that the Rawafid are disbelievers because they hate the companions. Okay? So this is what you can find from qtafsir.com. Now, let's go to the next hadith. Now from Dhabi on source Al-Kaba'ir, page 237. Whosoever criticizes or abuses them, then he is out of religion and fold of Muslims. This is from Al-Kaba'ir, from Shaykh al-Dhabi. Okay. Now here's another one with the kill the Rafida from Ibn Hajar al-Haythami. Says Al-Daraqutni says the reports about killing rejectors have lots of claim in our literature, and it is narrated by Fatimah al-Zahra and Salama. This is from.
Sorry, bro, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No,
is there any chance you can actually explain what the term Rafida means?
Rafida means rejectors. Anybody who rejected the companions, basically, such as Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, mainly. So whoever rejects the caliphate, like that's how we know it from. Okay, but when the Sunni school know it from, it's other. Also the same way, which is also the same way, is the people who reject the companions of the Prophet. So they rejected Islam completely, basically. Well, that's why we have the term Rafida. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now from Ibn Hajar al-Haythami, Al-Daraqutni says the reports about killing rejectors, as we see here, rejectors, have a lot of change in our literature, and it is narrated by Fatimah al-Zahra and Salama. Now, this also is As-Sawa'iq al-Muhriqa, volume 1, page 4. It's the scans. Now, there's another hadith from al-Baqilani. The reader should know that we have mentioned that there are apparent reports from Ahlulbayt that are in clear contradiction with the reports that they narrate from them, i.e. the Shias narrate from them. For the reports that are narrated from Imam Ali alayhi salam and his progeny alayhi salam with respect to cursing the rejectors or Rafida, doing la'an on them and disassociating with them, then they are so plenty, and apparently there are multiple reports among the scholars of hadith. This is in source Al-Intisar, volume 2, page 506. And then Al-Baqlani continues, quotes on this next page, Ali alayhi salam, Imam Ali alayhi salam said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to me that, "Oh Ali, you are and your Shia are in paradise. However, there will be a group that will claim love of Ahlulbayt. They will have a pulse and would have called rejectors, Rafida. So kill them when you meet them, as they are polytheists or mushrikun." This is still an Intisar, page 507. Okay? Intisar, the Qur'an, 506, first hadith, 507 for the second hadith. Okay. Now, here's another hadith from Ibn Hajar al-Haythami. Ibn Abbas narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Oh Ali, there will be a group in my ummah that will claim for love of Ahlul Bayt. They will have a pulse and would be called rejectors. So kill them when you find them, as they are polytheists. Mushrikun." Tabarani narrates with a good chain and Sanad Hasan. Now with this hadith, there's a couple of opinions that apparently this hadith in particular is unauthentic, but we have here from the scan that we have the chain that is Hasan. Okay, so this is the source, Majma' al-Zawaid, volume 10, page 22. I'll just here, Majma' al-Zawaid, Manba' al-Fawaid. This, sorry, just scan properly. I'm just gonna zoom a bit. Okay, and that's the scan. Now, that's it, Ryan, for the disrespecting the companions. As you see, we have many opinions. One of them, for example, says that killed Rawafid. Other one saying whoever but disrespects the commander, Zindiq, Kuffar, and the list keeps going on. Sayyid Ali, do you want to comment on that?
No, I think you pretty much summed up the main points that, obviously when it comes to the term Rafida or Rafidi, we, the followers of the Ahlulbayt alayhi Islam, hold this title in high regard. Sorry, I think you're still screen sharing.
No, I'm stopping it now.
When it comes to this term, we believe that, this title or this term was given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously, we have a different narrative in terms of how we got this title. But obviously, when it comes to Sunni literature, you've got the complete opposite side, which, as you can see, you've got narrations that mentioned how, according to their narrative, the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, they cursed the Rafida, which is obviously, as far as we're concerned, we consider this to be a fabrication. I don't know if Ryan wants to add anything to these points. So.
Yeah, is my mic working?
Yeah, sure. You're coming through fine. Can't see you though.
Oh, sorry. Just my aunt's just walking past, so I'd rather just not think. In regards to the term Rafida, it's been reported in their books, from my knowledge, that it came from Muawiyah. Have you guys seen what I'm talking about?
I don't know about Muawiyah, but I don't know it came from their scholars. As we've seen before. I don't know if it came from Muawiyah, but I'm not too sure about that.
It's interesting. It's interesting because there was actually a companion who went by the name of Abu Tufail, and he was Rasulullah be pleased with him, and we'll have to do a show on him one day. But he was considered amongst the last few companions of the Prophet, and may peace and blessings be upon him and his family. And he was a Sahabah. And later, there's the ulama within the Sunni school. They said that he actually became a Rafidi. So by definition, he would be a cursed companion. If you can get my point, if you understand.
Yeah.
So it's very strange, So but yeah, I mean, there's definitely more can we add to that. I mean, what can you say?
Do we have any more ahadith about the concept of cursing the companions in general? I believe there was, has any scholars, said to the contrary to what we've seen with these narrations from the scholars, and also the ones they've attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Because if you think about it, you've got such a huge school of thought with such varying opinions.
Right.
We've seen in the previous videos that there's no consensus, even when it comes to definitions of words. Is there? Is it always just been directed towards the Rafida in regards to this concept, or have they actually stated, if you say this about the Sahaba, then this will happen, or the punishment would be this, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the point that Ryan's trying to make here is that, obviously, I don't know. I mean, Sayyid Rida, I mean,
like a difference of opinion. I'm pretty sure he's trying to say that, like, when you disrespect, do you just automatically become a Rafida, or is there other times they can call you, or is there like a specific punishment they will punish you?
Yeah. There is hadith on this as well, right?
Well,
yes, there is. Like in some countries nowadays, and some.
I know.
Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead. Ryan.
No, sorry. Well, obviously, there's obviously Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, there's a punishment for slandering the Prophet. According to numerous scholars. You know what I mean? Is there punishments for also disrespecting the Sahaba? I think we'll find that in the video that was recently made, there was a certain Shia scholar was pretty much the basis of that video, and I'm aware that when this individual lived in Kuwait, he was charged for insulting the companions.
Blasphemy charges.
That's the thing. He was charged with blasphemy charges because he was cursing the Sahaba. So there's obviously a basis for that. You know what I mean?
There was also one guy
insulting the Prophet.
1 second. There's also one person in Saudi Arabia. He what do you call it? He also disrespected the companions in Mecca al-Mukarramah, and he almost got executed. But because he was from other Western country, I think he had like a American passport, was Australian. I can't remember properly, to be honest. But because the embassy helped him get out of there, but he's not allowed to come back to Saudi Arabia because he received the death penalty.
Well, if you look at,
well, then let him off. No, say we can't hear you. You're mute.
Sorry. Okay, Ryan. So just on a quick point, right? So it's disrespect to insult the Sahaba. Okay. Firstly, they cannot even come to an agreement what the word Sahaba is. So isn't it disrespectful to claim someone is not a Sahaba? And if I don't consider someone to be a Sahaba by definition, then how is it disrespectful to insult them?
That's amazing. Exactly. Good point.
And more,
say for example, someone doesn't.
And more importantly, why didn't the Sahaba themselves have this opinion? Because if we are claiming that they were all adul, that they were all just and truthful people, surely there must have been hadith from the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, that were narrated about those specific individuals. But despite that, they would have fought each other, cursed each other, and went as far as killing each other. So,
I've often heard the argument from brothers and sisters from the Sunni school that they were allowed to do it because they were each other's peers and etc. Is that logical? Because
they were getting reward for cursing each other.
It's like the example. It wasn't the example.
Each other.
It's like the. Sorry, I just want to comment on one thing. It reminds me when I hear some people say that, you can't curse just because the Qur'an shows many verses when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curses other disbelievers and etc. So you can't do that. Allah is only allowed to do that. So, but isn't the Qur'an a guidance book that we should take teaching from? That there are certain disbelievers that we are allowed to curse and etc.
Exactly. Well, it's a part of, as we've talked about before on the channel, Islam is very dualistic. It does tell us to respect everyone and all these kind of things, but at the same time, it also draws a line in the sand, which allows us to clearly identify who we are. And when someone is clearly out of line and they're doing something that's just beyond, you know, what is Islamic, you know, that has to be called out upon. You know, if someone's, you know, we look at people like ISIS who blatantly just murder people. You know, we're not supposed to sit there and just say nothing. You know, when I've seen people in the UK, they just sit there and say nothing when it comes to, you know, certain individuals like Bin Laden or something like that. That's how is that the Christians don't do that? We're supposed to be the better religion. We have to be able to step.
Absolutely right. And you know what? I'm just going to make a quick point. The thing is, at this moment in time, we just kind of putting the foundations in before we actually come to historical accounts where they did curse each other. For example, there's a hadith which I believe is mentioned in Bukhari, which says that if one curses another Muslim, it's considered to be fisk. Okay.
Yeah.
So if a Sahaba curses another Sahaba, even if he was to curse another Muslim, it would be considered to be fisk, or that Sahaba would be considered to be a fasik. So the whole concept of adala goes out the window there, right?
Of course.
They've got traditions that say that if two Muslims fight, if one kills the other, then both of them are going to go to hellfire. So they can't escape these traditions. Either we accept that these reports are authentically reported on the authority of the Prophet, and when it comes to the laws of Islam, the Sahaba are underneath it, or we accept that these rules or these traditions don't mean anything, and the Sahaba have a high status when it comes to.
And I wanted to ask you something as well. What about the concept of ijtihad? When one of the Sahaba make a decision, but it's incorrect, he gets one reward. And if it is correct, it's two rewards. Like, does that also include when they're fighting each other? Like, if one's wrong in fighting the other, you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's ridiculous as well, because, you know, if that was the case, then, you know, the Sunni ulama wouldn't have considered Mawiyah to be a Baghi, right? Dr. Zani wouldn't have mentioned that not all the Sahaba were just and truthful people. But again, you know, we're going to come to these things in a later show. You know, inshallah, we're going to talk about where Sahaba insulted each other, cursed each other, fought each other, went as far as killing each other. We are going to discuss the verses of the Holy Quran which are often used, and, you know, we're going to exhaust all efforts until we come to a conclusion with those verses. So I think for now, you know, obviously we should try to stick on you know, setting the foundations in terms of, you know, what is disrespecting the Sahaba.
So do we have any more hadith regarding this concept of disrespecting the Sahaba? You know,
Sayyid Rada, do you have any? I don't have any.
No, pretty much covered all of it. Like, that's the only ones I have.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, I'm glad. Well, okay. Can I bring up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. You're on mute, Sayyid.
Apologies. So yeah, I mean, of course, some people may argue that these reports that we have are all weak, right? That they don't have any basis, and even though these scholars, which Sayyid Rada presented, they may deem them to be weak. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to screen share, and I'm going to show a document. And the reason why we show scans is on the basis that nobody can accuse us of making up things. So they're more than welcome to go out there and purchase these books for themselves. And if somebody's Arabic speaking and fluent, they're more than welcome to always go and verify these references. You know, go out there, ask the scholars of your local community, ask the imams, you know. So these type of things, you know, this is the reason why we present these evidences. So yeah, so linking this to Sayyid Rada's statement earlier, you know, some may deem those reports to be weak, and like, you know, we have a habit nowadays. We have people who say, "Oh, this report it's a weak narration," even though some of the major scholars may have authenticated these reports, right? So now we're going to go to the fatwas. So now we know that the scholars have even issued fatwas based on those reports. So it's not something which can merely be brushed under the carpet. The first fatwa I want to bring up is from the famous Hanafi jurist Mullah Ali Qari, and he says, proving disbelief, kufr of someone who abuses and insults their companions generally, and Abu Bakr and Umar, especially, basically. Okay. Then he says, all these hadith that talk about killing Rafidah, although in isolation, have weak chains, but they strengthen one another and goes to the level of a sound hadith, meaning that the reports reach to the level of being Hasan. And then he says, it is permissible to use the sound hadith for conjuncture issues in jurisprudential matters. Therefore, someone who abuses the companions from the Kharijites and the rejectors, meaning the Rafidah, are to be killed. From the book Al-Sham al-Awrda, I believe, page number 68. And there's the book there. Give me a second. And there's a statement which you can see on the screen. You can always go back and always pause it and read it for yourself. The other page number 68. And the famous scholar, which is called the Sheikh of Islam, especially from the brothers from the Salafi community, very respected individual. And Ibn Taymiyyah says, a group of the jurists from the people of Kufa and others have said to kill someone who curses the companions, and they have said the Rafidah are disbelievers. So this was the opinion of the jurists from the jurists of Kufa. Maybe not necessarily the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah, but of course we will come to that. And this book is called As-Sarim al-Maslul al-Shatam Rasul. I believe this book was written about those who disrespect the Prophet, and obviously here specifically mentions those who disrespect the companions of the Prophet. That's page number 569, 570, and there's a scan of the book on the cover, publishers, it's been distributed by, and there's page number 569, and the statement's found, I believe, towards the bottom, and then it continues on to the next page, the top. 570, I believe that was. And this is another scholar, Rashid Ahmed Ludunwani. I don't even know how to pronounce his surname, apologies there. I think he's a scholar from the Indo-Pak subcontinent. And he says the rulings for heretics. So obviously, as Brother Sayyid Reza mentioned earlier, anybody who was disrespecting the Prophet not only is considered to be amongst the disbelievers and considered amongst the mushrikeen. Another term that, which often, by the way, I want you to pay attention to this as well. I'm not going to mention any channels here. Those who watch our channel and always know what our conduct's like generally. But, there are certain channels out there which throw these terms as well. They'll throw the term out Rafidah, and especially this term Zindiq. They'll always be like, oh, the Shia Zindiq, or this person's a Zindiq, or Sayyid Ali the Zindiq. So what do they mean by this term Zindiq? Okay. The term Zindiq, according to the scholars, is quite clear. It says heretics are wajib al-qatl. It's compulsory to kill them. Number one. And number two, if heretics are arrested, then their repentance will not be accepted, although their repentance will be accepted before arrest. Number three, it's not allowed to marry them. Number four, the slaughter is not halal, meaning that you cannot eat the meat that's being slaughtered by their hands. So yeah, whenever you hear this term Zindiq, heretic, etc., know what they actually mean. What is the legal implications of calling somebody a heretic? And this is from the book Asan al-Fatawa, and this is in volume 1, page 89. Quickly bring up the scan, and I believe they've actually removed this from the.
It's
Sorry. What was that, Ryan?
It's quite scary when it's quite scary when we hear the term thrown around a lot online.
That's
and
then
you actually see
this is very important because I'm not going to mention no channels here because at the end of the day that's never been our way, right? We don't mention people's names. We're not that thick, right?
100%.
We don't start mentioning people's names. We don't start mentioning people's location and all that sort of stuff. The extremely childish things that people do, which unfortunately now it's got to that point where people are doing that, right? So again, you see these terms: Zindiq, Mushrik, Rafida. What does it mean? Yeah, Kuffar. What does it mean by this? So what are they essentially calling towards? Right?
Like, see, that's the thing, said. I think these people actually just say this word without knowing what it actually
No,
means.
no. The people who use this term, they know fully well what it means.
Oh,
Some of them. But what's interesting, I just want to quickly point out before I finish on this. I believe this is in the Arabic. No, hold on, give me a second. And this is in the Urdu edition. And I just want to bring up another scholar, and his name is Ahmed Sirhindi, who was known for being, he was called a mujaddid because basically what in the Sunni concept, they have a principle called a mujaddid, and a mujaddid is somebody who's a reviver of the religion. Every century or so, there's somebody who comes along and he's a reviver of the religion. And some of the well-known scholars, I think maybe Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani was included amongst the people who was considered to be a mujaddid. Maybe Ahmed ibn Hanbal as well, I'm not too sure. But yeah, they have a list of scholars who are considered to be a mujaddid. And they're like considered to be the elite of scholars.
I believe Shafi is considered a mujaddid.
Yeah, he may have well have been. And they've got numerous scholars. So this individual, Ahmed Sirhindi, was also called a mujaddid as well. And he's got a book. It's called Risala Rad al-Rafida. And in there he mentions there are sound reports testifying that cursing Abu Bakr and Umar is disbelief. Then he quotes the narration. Then he mentions Darul Qutni narrates that Ali from the Prophet, who said that there will be group people after me, that they will claim love for the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, and they will have a pulse and will be called rejectors, Rafida. So kill them when you find them, as they are polytheists, mushrikun. And this is actually from the official website. I've actually put a link there as well at the bottom underneath this actually image, which is available online. But what's interesting is they actually remove this from the Urdu edition, because you can imagine, right? So the part that says kill them where you find them has been removed from the Urdu edition. This is the Urdu edition of the book, which is published in Pakistan. And what do? They've actually removed the part which mentions specifically, killing the Shia. So yeah, there you have it, guys. You have the scholars who've obviously endorsed these hadith and acted on these traditions. Right?
Yeah. SubhanAllah, that's quite scary stuff. Said, brother, do you have any fatwas regarding this topic?
Well, I've just mentioned this before. There's a couple of fatwa from scholars previously. It is a scary stuff, as you said, Ryan. Like it's you just get speechless, honestly, bro.
Yeah,
honestly, but the irony is there's another.
You understand now where these present day terrorist organizations like Daesh and Jabhat al-Nusra and all these groups, where they get their belief. We can sit there and be like, well, these guys are an extremist, but the question is, they must be getting their
methodology from somewhere.
Yeah. There is a basis to it, and this is obviously quite clearly you can see where they're getting their religion from.
Exactly right.
But is this a majority opinion?
No, there's a difference of opinion actually on this topic in particular. I'm just going to screen share. I'm just going to show you guys scholars who said the opposite. All right.
Yeah, because it comes back to that point, Ryan. Right? If we're going to say that, look, that it's disbelief or whatever to insult the Sahaba. Well, clearly we know from history that they insulted each other for whatever reason is possible, whatever reason they had, and obviously they considered that such people should be killed. They would kind of shoot themselves in the foot, because then, if it's kufr, then the Sahaba would automatically fall into disbelief as well, by that definition.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, please, if you got anything on that, it would be great if you could share.
No, of course. I'm just going to screen share now again. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
I can't yet. Yep.
Ryan, can you?
Yeah, we can. But you need to make your Word document larger. Brilliant.
Okay, awesome. Okay, guys. Now, here's something from the Kuwaiti Ministry of Islamic Affairs. The majority of scholars do not deem a person that abuses the two sheikhs, Abu Bakr and Omar, to be kuffar. This source is Mawsa'at al-Fiqh, volume 13, page 232. This is the scan from the Kuwaiti Islamic Institute. Okay, and here's the statement there. Okay, now let's go to the next one. And surprisingly, this fatwa and statement from Ibn Taymiyyah, I was very surprised to see, to be honest. And merely abusing someone other than the Prophet ﷺ does not necessarily make the abuser a kafir, because some of those who were in the time of the Prophet used to abuse one another, and none of them was declared kafir because of his practice, and also because it is not wajib to have faith, particularly any of the companions. Therefore, abusing any of them does not detract from the faith in Allah and His books and His Messenger and the Last Day. Okay, so
Stop it there. I want to have a look at that carefully now, because this is quite an interesting one. And
Yeah,
merely abusing someone, merely abusing someone other than the Prophet does not necessarily make the abuser disbeliever. Great, okay. Because some of those who were in the time of the Prophet, meaning the companions, used to abuse one another.
exactly
and none
right.
of them were declared disbelievers because of this.
Exactly, and surprisingly, look who's actually the person who wrote it.
And the best part, look at the best part, because it's not wajib. It's not wajib to have faith.
Wajib, well done. There we go.
Particularly in any one of them.
It's quite interesting that Ibn Taymiyyah was the one who said this, because when you read it, you're like, oh, this is quite a liberal stance, especially
exactly right.
But at the same time, you think about it, and you look at numerous reports that we may have, and which we'll touch on in the future, regarding certain people cursing other certain people. It would make sense for him to downplay such acts.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. The source for this one, guys, hold up. Sorry, let me just give me eye. Source is As-Salam al-Maslul ala Shatm al-Rasul, page 1086. There's a scan. Okay. There's the, what do you call it? Yes. Okay. Allama Abdul Ali Muhammad al-Sahlawi al-Ansari al-Luqnawi. According to the Hanafis, Rawafids are not kuffar. Like, see, now here's something interesting. Before Sayyid Ali and me and Sayyid Ali, we mentioned a couple of fatwas from scholars that the Rawafids are kuffar, and some scholars even said that you should kill them. But here's another fatwa. You know what I mean? Here's another Sunni scholar.
That goes against Mullah Ali Ghari's statement. You notice that?
Well done. Well done. Okay, this is in Fatah al-Rahmut في شرح مصارم الثبوت, volume 2, page 294. Okay, Ibn Abidin says, if he refers Ali or curses the Sahaba, he is an innovator, but not a kafir. Okay, so he's not saying that we're just Ahl Bid'ah. You know what I mean? Just people of innovations.
So, bro, so just a quick point. When it says if he prefers Ali, does he mean as in, does he prefer Ali over Abu Bakr and Umar in preference?
That's what I'm pretty sure. That's what I'm pretty sure on this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just about like tafdiliya. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Tafdiliya.
Somebody who shows superiority.
You know what I mean? Because you have some, even within the Sunni sect, we have people who we call tafdiliya. Like they just prefer Ali over Uthman, for example. But with our case, we just prefer Ali over Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. Okay. The source is Rad al-Mutahhar على الدر المختار, volume 4, page 135. Okay. Now this one's from Mullah Ali Qari. Then again, from the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa, that Ahl al-Qibla, even if he is Ahl al-Bid'ah, as I said before, that we can as Ahl al-Bid'ah technically, so not kuffar, according to some scholars, doesn't become kafir due to his sins. It proves that no one becomes a kafir merely by abusing Abu Bakr and Umar. And this is an interesting point. Like, no one becomes a kafir by abusing. Look at the term here, no one. You know what I mean? Yeah, so to abuse Abu Bakr and Umar is not kufr. Not kufr. As Abu Shakur as-Salimi has quickly proved in his book Al-Tamheed, and it is because the basis of this claim is not proven, nor its meaning is conferred, as cursing a Muslim is fisq, as proven in Sahih Muslim that says cursing a Muslim is fisq and killing him is kufr. They were both Abu Bakr and Umar and other Muslims are on par in light of this hadith. So that's Sharh al-Fiqh al-Akbar, page 211. Sayyid Ali, do you want to comment on this, bro?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because what he's done here. So, okay, he mentioned that tradition which I was talking about earlier, right? That is fisk to insult another Muslim. So he mentioned it in Sahih Muslim. I believe it may be in Sahih Bukhari as well. But whatever the case, it's in the two Sahih books. So he's saying here that, he says that if we consider, in other words, if one was to consider Abu Bakr and Umar or Uthman or whoever to be Muslims, then by cursing them, it's not an act of disbelief. Rather, it's an act of fisk.
Well done.
So it's great. I think that's a very interesting point.
And Sayyid, like, you also hear some people saying, if you go through YouTube and stuff, you see some people saying that us as the Shias, we're not kuffars, but our scholars are. Now, question, based on this statement, does that still make our scholars kuffar, or just people of innovation?
That's a good point. I hear that. I've heard this slogan before in the past, and that is, "Oh no, we don't consider the average Shia to be disbelievers." Which, because they say the average Shia may be ignorant, and therefore he doesn't know the ideology, their beliefs, etc. But the Shia ulama, the Shia scholars, they know it better. Therefore, they'd be considered to be disbelievers. But based on this particular topic regarding insulting the Sahaba, no, they wouldn't be considered disbelievers.
Cool.
It's quite evident from the traditions which you presented.
Okay, cool. Now, Sharh Fiqh al-Akbar, page 211. Okay. This is a scan. Okay. That's it for me from here. This is all I can gather up when it comes to the difference of opinions. Ryan, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I just find it, one, I just find the lack of consistency quite funny. And two, there was a famous trial that took place, I think, in the 70s and the 80s in the United States, and it was regarding heavy metal music. And it is relevant. There was one of the famous singers of that time. He was called in to talk about the content of his lyrics, and one of the senators or one of the people on the panel that was questioning him, was talking about the lyrics in one of his songs and saying, how could you write something that's so grotesque and et cetera, et cetera. This is obviously sexually related. And the guy said, no, this song's actually about my throat operation. And it's funny that you say that, because those who usually have a sick mind will find the sickness in something. You know what I mean? So if we look at all these narrations and we look at all these fatwas and stuff like that, it's quite funny when you see so many people of a certain school. They'll go straight for the most hateful. They'll go for the most condemning and the most violent.
The desires, right? They go for the desires and emotions.
Exactly. And the whole point, with Islam is, we have akal and nakal. You can't divide the two. You know what I mean? We're not like Christians who, not all Christians are like this, but many Christians who are just completely faith-based, and you just, go with whatever you want. You have the scripture, and then you have to use your intellect to interpret the scripture. And sometimes it's just evident, and it comes from people in our school as well, where people will just not do that. And they'll end up going with the most absurd opinions, even if they're a minority opinion, or if they're based on a minority view. And I think it's quite clear that even people that, let's say from the Salafi school of thought, who revere Ibn Taymiyyah immensely, will completely disregard comments that he's made that we've touched on just prior. Yeah, I find it quite, it is quite dangerous, but it is a fact. And I find it quite absurd, but it is a fact, and it is quite dangerous. And inshallah, hopefully all these videos that we're doing will obviously help people to understand that, these opinions are there and that there is no consensus. So when a layman goes around saying, oh, this is this, where did they get that from? Because not everyone thought that. And even people that they revere, they didn't even think that. I find it
I think, Ryan, it's worth pointing out as well. I mean, at the end of the day, look, there is extremism. Extremism exists everywhere, right? Regardless of what school of thought you follow to some extent. We know extremism came about during the time of the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessing be upon him and his family, with the Kharijites, right? The emergence of the Kharijites, and then we have these reports where the Prophet he cursed them, and he even said that they would leave Islam like how an arrow would pass through a bow. And in some reports, he even said that if you see them, kill them, because these individuals were causing mischief and in the Muslim lands, and they were like, how can I describe you? I mean, obviously the history of Kharijites is known to everyone. I recommend people to read up about them, but nevertheless, you on one hand you have the Kharijites, then on the other hand you have the Nawasib or the Nasbis, and of course within our literature as well, we do have hadith which mentions about who the Nasbis are. In terms of who it's applied to, obviously that's quite a wide debate in itself. Generally speaking, the Muslim position or the Shia position is that anybody who recites the Shahada is deemed a Muslim. Nevertheless, would insulting the Ahlulbayt be considered disbelief or not? And if it's considered disbelief, what is the punishment for such a person? This goes into the whole big topic about capital punishment under Islamic law and what Islam says about that, and who can actually implement it. I think enforce it. Yeah, exactly, enforce it. So again, I think this is perhaps a topic for another time. But
I think these concepts are great to look at, because it really allows us and the viewers to reflect on Sharia.
The difference of opinion makes the difference of opinion of Sharia. Like you see a certain group of scholars say this and a certain group say that, and this is where a person can compare and seeing what is the majority consensus and what's the minority. Like, people shouldn't think there's always one opinion. There's always two sides to the story, and both should be taken into consideration.
Well, at least two. And furthermore onto that, it's not even just the concept of it, but, what the fiqh is. It's just the morality of it. You know what I mean? So, if you're calling for people to be killed because they did this and that, because, let's look at the Sahabah, for example. Ibn Taymiyyah himself, from what we just saw, he stated that certain Sahabah would, abuse each other. You know what I mean? And that's not, in his eyes, that wasn't deemed kufr. So, yet you have people that go around calling him the Sheikh of Islam, and saying the complete opposite. It is quite weird, and once again, I've brought up this term numerous times in our videos that I've featured on. There's a concept of cognitive dissonance. It's where you have a belief and then you have a contradicting belief at the same time, or you have a belief and then you do the complete opposite. And it kind of resonates with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, how no one is born with two hearts and the one body. You can apply it to that.
It's another way of saying hypocrisy in a way. Like, I'm sorry I have to use that term, but this has got to be quite frank. Like, in a way, it's just hypocrisy when you have two different opinions, and you know what I mean, Ryan? Yeah,
of course. Yeah, of course. So we really need to reflect on, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be religious people. You know what I mean? And when you've got a religion that's calling for people to be, killed because they don't agree with you, that's just a cult.
Disgusting. And it's throwing around terminologies and throwing around terms and stuff, and calling people mushrikeen and rafida. What are they essentially calling people?
It's for me. I don't have a problem with that. When it comes to the actual name calling concept, I don't have a problem. It's what you do with that. You know what I mean? Like, for me, if you're from a different sect, then you're clearly going to be. If you identify with a certain group, you believe that's the haqq. You know what I mean? If anyone else that identifies with a different sect, then obviously you don't think they're on the haqq. So if they're not on the haqq, then they've got to be innovators, or at least following innovation.
Do you not think that it could potentially feed on?
Can I just comment on that? Sorry,
Yeah,
can I just comment on that?
Sure.
Like this is the issue, right? Like, all right, the name calling and stuff. Okay, some people won't take it the wrong way. Some people will be easy on it. But look, but there's always going to be this one ignorant person, extremist, that if he's going to see a friend of his calling somebody else as Undeterred, and here is the fatwa we read before about how the Zanadqa should be killed and it's wajib killing them, vice versa. That person's going to think what that fatwa say. He's going to apply that. That's why, like, it's very, very dangerous, and you have to be very careful on who you're calling a Zindiq or who you're calling a Kafir and etc. Because you don't know the person next to you how he's going to think. He might apply that fatwa that the scholar that we just showed.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very, very valid point. But potentially, you're fueling hate. That's what you're doing, right? You're fueling hate. You're fueling violence, and it's because of these type of fatwas that, unfortunately, in places like Pakistan, you have terrorist organizations like Sahabah, which are a banned organization by the government, and they go and attack these Shia centers, right? They, and by the way, this is another thing, right? Because remember something, I want you to pay very close attention here, and that is, look, a Muslim's place of worship is called a masjid, right? Of course, Shias, we have a masjid, and then we have our Hussainiyas, right? Two different things to some extent, because when it comes to masjid, certain laws and rules, regulations apply to masjid, whereas within a Hussainiya, it's slightly different. Nevertheless, when it comes to, for example, other faiths like Hindus, they have a temple where they worship. But you'll notice that, I'm not going to mention the names there again, and I'm sure this individual is probably watching the show and his supporters are watching the show. But when you start using terms like temples for Shia centers, what are you essentially calling the Shias? You're calling them mushriks. You understand?
Yeah.
And again, what is the implications of somebody who's a mushrik according to your school of theology?
I remember watching.
It's, for example, it's just as bad as me calling a Sunni place of worship a synagogue, like trying to mock the Jewish temple and be calling it. Because, Jews have synagogues, I believe. So imagine if I call a Jewish temple, it's just ridiculous, right? It's just absurd. People, what can you say?
Like, bro, even when they start saying grave worshippers, licking graves, vice versa, all that stuff, because that all comes under the title of mushrik. You don't have to say temple or whatever. Just the, how do you say it? Just the accusations and just these insults that they give us. Like, disgusting. At the end of the day, look, we don't really care. Like, me personally, I don't care what you say to me, but I'm worried about the person next to you that's hearing this. You know what I mean? Because I don't know how he might think, as I said before.
Yeah. There's look, at the end of the day, Ryan, look, it comes back to the point. There's nothing wrong with approaching a subject academically, right? I mean,
exactly
in this whole show, what have we actually said that's disrespectful to anyone? I mean, if somebody has problems accepting the truth or listening to this, then it's not their cup of tea. They shouldn't be watching it. If they're driven by their emotions, then this is not for them. Avoid it,
Exactly right. Like, let's say if I'm discussing with somebody, if he's going to start getting emotional or if I feel getting offended, I can choose to leave. You know what I mean? I'm not forced to stay there at the end of the day. If I know if it's going to just go serious or it's going to go too emotional or too offensive, I can choose just to walk off. I don't have to stand there and listen to them. You know what I mean? For expect an argument.
Yeah. I think what's really important is the practicality of what we're talking about and in regards to the context of the words that we use and stuff. It's one thing to say it about people of the past, right? Which can be based on evidences and stuff like that, which are there, but the person's already dead. You know what I mean? So their judgment will be coming later. Then
exactly.
If you're talking about people that are alive at the moment, you're potentially putting their lives at risk.
Just on a quick point, I think the quote that Brother Radha mentioned earlier, Mullah Ali Qari. I'm not sure whether or not that was actually his own statement or whether he was quoting other Hanafi jurists who held that position about punishing, about the traditional reports about punishing Shia and so forth. But again, obviously there's a serious issue now, especially what's happening, especially in the Middle East and places like this. You look at these organizations and these groups, and you really think you ask yourself, you can understand why they have this negativity and this anger,
Bad image,
and it's hatred, and it's a religion driven. You know, if you could say it's an ideology driven. And I'm not saying this about all Salafis. There are decent Salafi brothers out there, but there is a sort of, you could say, a jihadi type of mentality camp that they have within themselves. I remember speaking to actually a Salafi sheikh on the same issue, and he admitted this. He said there is actually people who are driven by hate, basically.
yeah. There's two types, bro. I argue the jihadi type and the takfiri type. Honestly, like these are the two corrupted ones, and then there's just normal human beings one, the normal Salafis. A jihad, like you guys what I'm trying to say.
I think for me, even those two terms, we're talking about how certain terms have stigmas attached to them. You know, if you look at the term jihadi, there's technically nothing wrong with that term. It's just the people that usually are associated with it. And also the term takfiri. Like if you're going to do takfir on something, like obviously the Shia there's many Shia will do takfir, right? Because we believe that, you know, you have to disassociate and all this kind of stuff, and it's based on evidence. The same for Sunnis, they'll do the same thing. All schools of Islam, they'll do takfir based on their school, but it's what at the end of the day it comes down to what constitutes the punishment.
What happens after? Yeah, what happens after? Like you made that, you claimed the kufr. What do you do after that then?
Yeah, then what? You think just going saying all this kind of stuff isn't gonna, you know what I mean? Like we can't do anything about the people that are already dead. You know what
exactly.
I mean? I remember watching a video by it was a clip. It was this clip from a Sheikh Hamza Yusuf lecture, and he was talking about the concept of takfir and how some scholars said, you know, if one Muslim wants to do takfir on another, one of them, regardless of who said it or not, is a kafir. Because that's just how it is. Because if you're going out and calling someone something, it's either they are that, or you're spreading disbelief in of itself by your action. And I think people really need to grasp this concept that, you know, you might hold a certain opinion or whatever, but you need to go about it rationally, because it's a big deal. Because people will get killed. You know what I mean? People have been killed because of it. You know, you look at what's been happening in Pakistan, which has been denied for a long time, about Shias that have been happening to Shias there. You can argue the same. Sunnis have argued the same about Shias doing the same to them. You know what I mean? And if we both think that each other's side is doing it, then why aren't we trying to, you know, stop doing it?
Yeah, because of course. But it goes back. Right, it goes back to the same point, right? So there's extremism exists in every shape and form, and you know, just not in Islam alone. You have other forms. You know, for example, in Africa, you have a Christian movement called the Lord's Salvation Army, I believe it's called, or something along the
Salvation Army, yeah.
And you know, they mercilessly kill anybody who's pretty much not a Christian. And then obviously on the other side, I'm not going to mention any other names, but then you've got, you know, state level terrorism to some extent. So yeah. Unfortunately,
and
it's an issue that exists in Islam, but
yeah. See, for me, I don't think it exists in Islam. I think it exists in the Ummah, and people just keep associating it with Islam. But guys, do you have any more points regarding what we've mentioned already?
No, I'm pretty sure we've covered everything. Like, alhamdulillah, great show today.
We've kept it short and sweet. Unfortunately, we wanted to go into other issues, but perhaps we could save that for another time.
I'd just like to give my apologies if I came off a bit confusing. I just woke up before we did this video. I think there was one point where you guys were like, I think he's
actually, you know what? Hold on a second. There's two Aussies on this show.
Yeah, we're both woke up at the same time, Ryan. Don't you worry about that. I know that feeling.
Yeah, Ryan, just whatever you do, please do not stand next to any kangaroos, just in case you get accused of being some sort of radical.
I have to go go feed one. I have to go. I got a few in my backyard, I'm pretty sure. So.
Do you actually feed them?
When I'm at my grandparents' property in Brisbane, I will.
Hold on, listen. Why have you got a fire an image, a silhouette of a
Oh,
man. What are you shooting?
it was
Listen, I'm
just
not going to ask you. I'm not going to ask you on live TV. We'll talk about that.
I know, and I still didn't get put in the video.
Now people are definitely going to say you're a CIA agent or you're an MI5.
Well, yeah, put me in some. Why aren't I a hate preacher? Come on, man, look at this stuff. Look at this stuff. Dangerous.
Look, he's got a picture in the background as well. That's probably
I've got two of them.
Anyways, mate, how's your patient going? Oh, you got two.
That's even more worrying.
I know. Do you want to know their names? No, I'm just kidding.
no, please don't we mention names.
We don't mention names on this channel. All right, but yeah,
I hope we haven't mentioned names at any point. As far as I yeah, sometimes
we may slip up and we may say, you know, we're trying not to do that, guys. It is very difficult. We're trying to be as academic as possible on this channel. We're trying to be as respectful as possible on this channel. And we are all human. We all do slip up. Even the people that we're talking about, how they'll go around saying Zindiq and stuff like this. Is all just set out of ignorance a lot of the time. So we understand that, and you know, may Allah guide us all and hopefully, you know, increase us in our iman and our intelligence as well. But
inshallah, prepare us for the awaited Mahdi, whether you believe he's going to be born or whether you believe he's
exactly, inshallah. So, but yeah, Sayyid, thank you so much for this show today.
Thank you.
It was a good one. Thank you to the viewers.
Thanks, dude.